Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hi, everybody. Nice to have you with us yet again as we boldly attempt to dissect this brick of a book each week as we go along till we all go completely mad. So, I hope you've read chapter 8. I've read it a few times over the years, like multiple times. Timelines, that's funny. And I've now got my list of questions ready to grill poor Paul, who is wishing he never agreed to this process. So, a little bit of housekeeping. We're working out the chat box as we go along. Please use caps locks for your questions when you type in. It helps us to see it. That would be awesome. Secondly, there's an auto anti-spam thing on here. So if you type and hit enter and then try it again within 60 seconds, it either A, won't let you, or B, just won't show it. So just wait a minute before you post into the chat box. And we've also discovered that if you copy and paste text into the chat box, apparently that doesn't work either. So if you have a question, you actually have to type it. Apparently it doesn't like it when you copy and paste. So we've been reliably informed. So for anybody that had problems last week, I hope that sorts that out. Okay.
Right.
Deep breath. Hello to everybody.
G'day, Jackie, Robert.
Yeah, we can
Trish,
see you.
Julia.
Yeah, everyone's good. Everyone's good.
Mystic.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if there's questions as we go along, just type them in caps. If you try and type more than 2 questions,
I said that.
She said that.
I've got that all covered.
All done.
I just said it at 100 miles an hour. All right. So timelines. Chapter 8 was all about timelines.
There's already a question, by the way.
Whew, okay. Hang on.
If the Zetas live in the now, why do they ask what is the time process during a session?
That's a good question.
That's because they exist in their own now, and their own now is a level of space-time compression that is much faster than this three-dimensional space. Now, the Zetas can move into the three-dimensional space if they wish to, which means that they need to slow down their space-time compression. When they are talking through me to the sitters or people, then what happens is there's a disparity between this physical time frame and the time frame that they're in. And so they need to somehow pulse the questioning and the answering process as well.
There's also...
But they also ask what's the length of time that they've been speaking, because they don't want to cause any issues.
Yeah.
With
you.
Yeah, with me. Yeah.
Basically, yeah. Yeah, that's all to do with the frequency differences between them and us. It's not the same, and so when you're connected to them in that way, if you stay too long in that way, you're going to end up with some serious problems.
Yeah. This comes down to disclosure as well. So people go, oh yeah, I just want to go up and be with ET all the time. Well, depending on the race, will depend on whether you'll even be able to stay around them for more than 10 seconds or something.
Yeah, when they first started working through you, communicating through you, how long could they stay?
3 seconds.
3 seconds. It takes years to build up the strength of mind, if you like, to withstand them coming in and communicating. So it's taken me, I don't know, 15 years to 16 years to get to
15 minutes.
15 minutes, that's right, without having any major problems the next day or for the next few days. So it takes a long time.
Yeah.
And they don't want to tread over that time, because they step over that time. They know what that means. It means big problems for us, and so they're very protective, I guess. They want to make sure we're okay.
Okay.
All right.
Let's start with question number 1 then.
Wow, I've got questions already coming in on the phone. Okay. Okie dokie. I'll do these ones on the laptop first, and then I'll come to the messenger group in a minute for those people that are using the messenger group. So in the book, the Zetas talk about the hyperversals.
Right.
And they say they split the form. And I've assumed that the form is referring to a singular universe. And they created fragments, i.e. they created multiple universes, the multiverse from one universe. They split the form into fragments. Yeah?
So we could class the hyperversals as the Honorians.
Well, that was my question.
And they would then be, if there's, let's say that source is the end goal, but probably behind source there's something else infinitely as well. But if the shop front is the Honorians or the hyperversals, then they're void beings, and they exist outside of space-time and any interdimensional process. They would have created a conglomerate of something for consciousness that relates to the existence of matter.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, they would have then split each of those, the universe, or I don't think actually even the universe is the right word, the multiverse into infinite universes.
Okay. So my question was, were the hyperversals the same race of beings or entities as the Honorians?
Well, I think that's what they were alluding to. Back then, they didn't have the words to describe the Honorians. I hadn't met the Honorians at that point.
Maybe we can actually we can clarify that with them.
Yeah,
in the next session.
You could if you want.
I'm going to.
All right.
Okay, so we just had a message in the messenger chat. Some people are unable to type into the live chat box. You need to have subscribed to this channel, our YouTube channel. Is it 20 minutes ahead?
Yeah, 20 minutes ahead of the
live starting to do that. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, and all you need to do that is click the subscribe button, which should be underneath this video somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere there.
About there. If you click that, you'll be able to chat next time. Okay, so does each timeline exist in its own universe?
Yes.
It does. Okay, that was a short answer.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on that answer? Does each timeline exist? So, okay.
I think I just want to say in the beginning that these concepts are somewhat, in many ways, beyond our capacity to understand them fully. We have a rudimentary knowledge of the timeline process.
Yep.
And so I think we can all hypothesize as much as we want to, but we're only giving the information that the Zetas have given us. So I just want to talk about it from that perspective.
Okay. All right then.
Yeah.
Does that mean you want me to move on to the next question?
Yeah, if you want.
Can humans consciously move between timelines? And if so, how does that work?
Humans. So let's say that on this timeline, you want to move to the timeline that's next to you, which is a secondary universe. You can do it by shifting consciousness into that physical body or form that exists that is closest to this timeline. But you won't be able to stay there. That's why when we look at timeline travel through Montauk and the Philadelphia experiment, they would visit and then come back. They would observe and then come back all of the time.
Why can't you move permanently to another
because
timeline?
you're the wrong frequency. You can only exist on the other timeline in the other universe for a short time because you're just the wrong frequency. And so it would be like having a flu. The person that you seem to would ultimately be quite unwell very quickly.
So are you saying if you exist on another timeline, do you automatically become that other you on that timeline. So there's not
Yeah.
two of you existing. You merge into one.
No, your physical container still has some level of rudimentary consciousness, but you'd be stepping into yourself in the other universe, and then you would have a blended consciousness. It's not like the consciousness of the other you in the other universe steps out of its body to let you in.
Okay.
This is where so we know that hybrids form with spirit people and cause a symbiotic relationship. But the dissonance occurs if you move from one timeline to the next. You're out of phase with yourself, and this out of phase process means you must return back to this original timeline. And don't ask me how I know that.
I was going to say, do you want to talk about how you know that?
No.
Okay. All right then. I can see some more caps locks.
People are talking about if there's an echo, but people are saying that there is no echo.
No, there's a caps lock, something.
Oh, Trish, would you be aware of the higher consciousness during living different timelines? I would suggest that when you say higher consciousness, are you talking about source or higher self? And because you're unable to type every 60 seconds, we'll have to wait for the answer.
Well, why don't you answer both?
You'd be aware of everything that you are now, depending on the person that you are on that timeline, your personality. You may find that you may not be a spiritual person on another timeline, or you may be extremely spiritual on another timeline. You just can't tell what type of person you are on another timeline. To even think that you'd have the same personality isn't true. So I've been, when I was on another timeline for a very short time, just 72 hours, everybody else had a completely different personality. And that was my first clue that something had gone extremely wrong. And when people say that they travel to timelines all the time, I've only ever seen one comment on social media where someone was able to accurately describe what takes place.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to discuss it here because if it goes onto social media,
everyone
all of a sudden everybody will be saying, oh yeah, I've experienced that. No, actually no. So we won't be saying that.
All right then. We'll move on. Okay. What are portals and how do entities use them to cross timeline boundaries?
Oh, that's a big question, this one.
I know.
So people go, oh, there's black holes in the middle of the galaxies, black holes in the middle of the universe, black holes all over the place. The Zetas have said that black holes, you'll notice with light, it can only enter a black hole. You never generally see light coming out the other way. I mean, it's possible. But these black holes are actually portals from one universe to the next universe. And so you can imagine if you had 4 universes, you exit one, enter another, exit one, enter another, exit one, and then enter another, and the same process applies. So there'll be an exit point somewhere in a universe and an entry point as well. So that exit point will have light going into it, and the entry point into the universe will also have light coming out of it as well. And so these are portals, and they're used by some races to traverse across the structure of the multiverse.
Okay. The next question was, are black holes portals? You've kind of already answered that.
Yeah, and when we all say when you hear people say that they open portals, there's so many different types of portals that so imagine there's an energy portal, and the energy portal belongs with nature. So you walk past, you can really sense a strong level of energy coming from a specific place, whether there's ley lines there or whatever. Portals are also gateways as well. So gateways can be exit and entry points as well. Generally, the exit point needs to be created from here, but it can be created from another place, such as a lower realm or middle realm that's within this three-dimensional space. But the exit point will be in this space. The entry point will be an interdimensional point uh, within the fabric of this reality. I can see this conversation's about to get quite difficult.
I was going to say we could do like a whole show about portals, just nothing else, and all our experiences with portals as well. Like, oh boy,
yeah.
Let's not do that now. Okay. Do timelines close to us, as in close to this timeline we are all experiencing right now, have the same characteristics?
Some characteristics. There may be, so this is the timeline we're on, and then we've got a timeline either side of that. The building that you're in will resemble the building that you're in now, but the further out you go, the capacity for the building to look different, and specifically all of the personalities around, for all the people, the color of the building, the structure, the plants, the trees, will all start to look different as well.
And I know you could talk a lot more about that, but you probably don't want to, for the same reason you don't want to talk about other aspects of it, evidence-wise.
So Trish says, how do the races know where the other exit point of a black hole is? Well, at some point, somebody's travelled through these structures and come to the exit point. But then, of course, there's an issue, isn't there? How do you find the entry point back to your own process as well, back to your own existence? I mean, it's possible that they have technology that they're able to map where these exit and entry points are. I think it would be quite dangerous to jump into a black hole and go to another universe and go, oh, I don't know how to get back.
We will ask them.
That's probably...
That's a really good question.
Well, generally, the thing is also portals can be used inside this physical structure. So you may want to teleport, say, from here to somewhere else. I mean, obviously, that technology is if it exists somewhere, right? Then, of course, that's possible. We know that Montauk were doing teleportation using field generators. And Tesla was, I'm sure he was at one point the director of the Philadelphia experiment, if you look all that information up. But there are portals that are galaxy-wide portals as well, and portals within the galaxy structures as well. So they're everywhere.
Are portals naturally occurring phenomena, space phenomena?
So no. There are portals that are natural, but of course you can have a multidimensional gateway, and the multidimensional gateways are. I've seen them training the young Zetas on how to use these things. Very interesting. I can't explain any of the technology because I don't understand it. They had the Zetas in the school environment, thousands of them, and they had the multidimensional gateway or doorway there. They wanted me, I think I've told everyone this before, they wanted me to step through it. I refused. And then the other one just stepped through and then came back, one of the Zetas. And then I was told to go and sit back down because I didn't go through the gateway. But I thought, you know what, I actually just don't care. I'm not going through. I would have to be picked up and thrown through. So they can create them if they wish. Now, that comes down to things like contact and abduction. Are portals being created in the astral where you're then taken astrally into the astral through a portal? Or is a portal being created in matter and you're being, what's the word when they do that with spirits people?
Dematerialized.
Are they dematerializing a person and then using that state to move a person to another point?
That's another good question.
It's another very, very good question as well.
Okay. There's a couple of questions there.
Do multiple races use the same portals? Yes, they do. But let me just say that there's a bit of a difference between a portal and a multi-dimensional gateway. Gateways have the capacity, if you step into them, to then go to whatever specific race has programmed the other side of it. Whereas the portals are from point A to point B. They're just exit and entry points.
Okay. Have we seen these entry and exit points artificially held open by technology? Like, for instance, if the portal is open, does it always stay open, or does it close? And do the Zetas, do we know, do they use, or would they have technology that opened and closed a portal, like as a safety thing?
I've seen portals that are permanently open as exit and entry points to come to this planet, and there are the multi-dimensional gateways are always shut after entry or exit from them.
Okay. You're going to have to read that question because I.
John says, I have experienced consciousness through the minds and eyes of other humans, individually and on at least 4 separate occasions. I do not know if they did too. What say the Zetas? You're asking, do the Zetas experience consciousness through humans? Yes, they do, because many races have hybrids on this planet, and those races are experiencing life and consciousness through that physical human form.
Yeah. Lots of races do that, don't they?
There you
go. Okay. Can people view other timelines? Is it something that people can learn to do?
We have to come back to what the Zetas have said about observation. So the Zetas use a synthetic quantum environment to take a snapshot of this current timeline. They place it into the SQE, and then they get a whole lot of technology in Zetas, and then they step in. They have a fraction of a second to view that timeline before the observation changes that undulating timeline form. They, at that point in time, have taken a snapshot of that timeline.
And then they put it all together.
And then they try and put it together the best that they can. So when you're viewing a timeline, say a secondary timeline, not this timeline, this timeline's different, but if you're viewing a secondary timeline or a timeline that is proximal to you, you're probably going to be changing what's occurring on the timeline via the act of observation. And you also will, through remote viewing, bias what you see from your understanding of the laws of the universe. And it may be that the other timeline doesn't operate on the same universal laws as this one does, but without even realizing it, you're biasing what you're seeing because of the belief structures that you may hold or may not hold as well.
So you're saying, yes, humans can view other timelines via a remote viewing process.
But I would suggest
in the observation, it's highly likely to change it.
Yeah, it's probably going to be fairly inaccurate. Whereas if you remote view this timeline, which we have with the Zetas, there's a suggestion that you can either be successful or non-successful. I know that sounds a bit funny, but it will depend on whether how far ahead you want to try to view. This comes back to Montauk and the Philadelphia experiment again with Nichols. What's his name?
Preston
Nichols and Al Bielek. They talked about time locks, where they specifically locked time areas that people were not allowed to jump to as well.
Okay.
And so there's a lot around this. There's also a mechanism that the Zetas have discussed called time locks that's got nothing to do with that.
Well, that is literally my next question.
Good, I'll have a cup of tea while I'm waiting.
What's a time lock? You've got no time for that tea. What is a time lock? And have the Zetas given any information to support their existence?
This is complicated.
I know.
All
We're
right.
going to have to upgrade that tea to coffee soon.
It's tea to coffee. So think about it. Everything is interlaced, and so everything has relationship with everything else. But that means that that relationship can also be broken between the timelines as well. All I know at this point from the Zetas is that there are some levels of technology that have been used on timelines that has caused a level of disassociation between some timelines. It doesn't mean that they're completely separated, because if that took place, that would be an absolute devastation. But the thing is that there's definitely some issues in regards to that. And Tricia goes, "Where's the evidence? The evidence for what, Tricia?" I mean, that's a very short statement. If you've done some homework in regards to the Montauk, Philadelphia experiments, they show you all the mathematics, the physics, and the calculations as well for things like the delta t function. And so, when we ask for evidence, we need to have done some study ourselves to seek out to see what humans have actually been doing. Things like the jump room technology with Basaggio and other people as well.
Yeah, more interesting timeline information if you go and look down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's a big rabbit hole too.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Trish says she's not a scientist.
Neither am I, but it's a 4-hour video that they've got. It's quite easy to sit. Well, not the maths, I jumped past that, but definitely the explanation of the 3 people that were involved in those projects, and a lot of the other people that were involved in that project.
I'll give the context of that information. There's a 4-hour video that was recorded at a conference. Was it in the early 80s, the conference?
It was years
ago.
Yeah,
it's really bad, grainy old video that somebody's dug out the cupboard from somewhere. And it's very dry, and it's
I thought it was
hard.
really interesting.
It is, but it's like, whew, over my head. But basically, these guys who we're talking about, they gave a presentation about how these time function devices that they had created worked. And they had they broke it down into all these equations, like way over my head by so much.
Well, the room was full of physicists.
But the room was full of scientists, physicists, the people that are scientists, and not one of them disputed any of what they were being told and shown on, like old school, writing it on the whiteboard.
And the formulas are being written up on the board, on this big massive board.
Yeah.
And the scientists are saying, "Sorry, what does that function do?" And so
but then they're nodding their head in agreement as they carry on and show how they've worked it all out. It's like, whoa.
It would be really interesting to be, like somebody who was a mathematician or a physicist, or
if anyone out there is, PhD with physics or
and
whatever,
wants to watch that
we'll
video.
give you the link and you can watch it, and you can see for yourself what they've got written down. It'd be very interesting to have.
Because you could imagine somebody pretending to know what they were talking about. And they get up there and they start to write these calculations down. Everyone goes, "They don't exist."
Yeah, nope.
Or that's rudimentary at best. No, that function doesn't work.
Yeah.
No, you can't use that with that one. No. So I think, it's really interesting, isn't it? It's very interesting stuff.
All right, here's your next question. Are humans able to leave their body at will and enter into a secondary timeline? So if you really wanted to, could you do it?
You can, but you think about it. What do you think would be the problem with doing that? The answer is getting back. Once you've left this timeline consciously and you've moved to the other timeline, you're now in dissonance. And that means that you no longer have the absolute control over the process that you had when you left this timeline. On that timeline, you now have to somehow find a way to get back to the harmony of the timeline. That because you're in dissonance, it's like you're unwell and someone tells you, be well, and you go, I'm having trouble doing that. That's exactly what would happen. You would have problems getting back. Uh, so really won't be talking too much about that either, because I think the more information we give away in regards
It's
to,
not something you'd recommend doing, is it?
well, I think that you could imagine and even postulate that you could do these things, but the imagination's a very powerful thing, and the what I find interesting is if you're on a secondary timeline, you can actually talk to the people that you know on the primary timeline. They still know you. And if you've got some level of relationship with them where they trust you, you can discuss the fact that you're on a different timeline with them. And they will understand that you are, because I did it.
Yeah, we did.
It's not the body, Trish. Trish says, what happens to the body when you're on a different timeline if you can't get back? You probably would just be in a coma, but I'm not a medical expert or anything like that. But the person on the other timeline, your consciousness would basically, because you're in dissonance, it would just fade away.
What would fade away?
Your consciousness.
Your conscious. Okay, so
because you're on a secondary timeline.
Hang on.
You're out of your harmonic or harmony environment. You're now in dissonance. The consciousness is a construct that's held in its specific level of knowledge via the fact that you're in a frequency. You've come out of your frequency. You're on your secondary timeline, and what happens is the distortion would basically undo the construct of the mind, of the consciousness.
All right. So
remembering that the consciousness has populated itself with knowledge, it would be the knowledge that would become dysfunctional. But of course, because it's spirit, it would then return to spirit realm.
Right.
That opens up a lot of questions, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now my poor brain is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. Okay. So so a person is a person's container. Their body is animated by the spirit consciousness.
That's right. It's enlivened. Yeah.
What is jumping to the secondary timeline? Are we saying it's the consciousness of the construct, or are we saying it's the higher self spirit?
I don't believe that anybody can answer that question.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
because
I do. Yeah.
If it was the spirit jumping, the higher self spirit consciousness jumping over to the secondary timeline, the body on the primary timeline would be
finished,
left vacant, and would pass.
So I would suggest, and this is just a hypothesis, right? So we're hypothesizing. It's more that you're because in the end there is no separation. That's the first thing. But when we say that, then that makes all the other conversations meaningless. So if we understand that when you go to sleep at night, you leave your body and you go into the astral, there's still part of you that's associated with the physical form, because you do come back. But if you actually leave this harmony and go to dissonance, then what happens is at some point there'd have to be and I think the time frame is 72 hours. After 72 or so hours, there is a separation between the construct and the higher self. And the higher self will then have to either recreate a new construct, which would be a new personality on the main timeline, or the higher self would have to go back to the oversoul.
I can see a lot of questions coming for the Zetas from this in the next sitting. All right. Why does the oversoul process enable spirits to exist on infinite timelines?
The simplest way to explain this is that if source is here, creates a separation, say the Honorians or the hyperversals, then the informations come into the timeline because of the fact that there are infinite universes. They are replicated across all of the timelines.
Okay, I've just seen Julia's comment. This is rather confusing. Yes, it really is.
Well, there wouldn't be anybody that can discuss timelines and put it into a completely rudimentary form, because timelines are actually quite a difficult subject to discuss, because, of course, there's a lot of, I guess, theoretical discussion that takes place.
Well, it's all theoretical unless
Yep.
you've done it. But even if you've done it, which you have, that still doesn't mean you understand all the ins and outs of
But
what's
I never
actually
went
taking
to.
place.
It's like saying that when you astral travel, you always go to the same place. Now, anyone that astral travels know that that may not be so. That you may jump out one time and be in real time space. The next time you jump out, you're in a completely different rift or energy. The other time, you may move into an interdimensional space.
Um, I think is that a comment by Nancy or is that a question?
Oh, I don't know.
I can't read it.
I think it's,
Nancy, if that's a question, can you just retype?
no, I think it's a comment.
It's a comment. Okay, cool.
They do all that for me. I would never try that on my own.
Oh, okay.
I don't. What's the next question?
The next question is, what is the determining factor when a Zeta will incarnate?
Well, when the hybrid process started 70 or 80 years ago, that was the determining factor. It would depend on the level of control that's required for the hybrid as to whether they would then be embedded as a node into the three-dimensional space of the human species.
Okay.
NSA key, we can see. Can anybody see my question? But I couldn't see a question.
We can't see a question. If you've copied and pasted
Julia
it in,
says she can see it. So, Julia, do you want to type out NSA's question for him? I don't think that we missed the question.
No, I don't think so. We can't see it. If you copied and pasted it, it won't show.
And that's true. That's true.
Although then Julia can see it.
Julia can see it.
Well,
But anyway.
we'll wait for that to come up. I think you might have answered this one. When a spirit incarnates, it is said to do so on multiple timelines. Is this by choice, or is it just a natural default process of the oversoul?
When a spirit incarnates, it is said to do so on multiple timelines. Is this by choice, or is it a function of the oversoul? It is absolutely a function of the oversoul.
Okay, so it just happens all on its own.
Yeah.
Okay. You might have already touched on this one too. If a human did manage to move to another timeline, would there be an effect on their mental stability?
What was that question? If the human did manage to move to another timeline, would there be yes, absolutely. Yeah. You because you're in dissonance initially. It's like I can only relate it to like getting a cold. So initially you go, I feel a bit unwell. But as the day progresses, you start to realise that you're now not in the same space that you were in regards to your wellness. And then next thing you know, you've got a cold or whatever, and you've got a cough and a runny nose. It would be the same process, but not at that level. It would be at a much higher level. And I'll come back to disclosure. So when people are getting contact with extraterrestrials, what they find is that there's either a psychological or a physical ramification to that contact.
And that's because of the frequency.
And that's because of the frequency. So if you move from one timeline to the next,
and
you are really doing it and not just in your mind doing it, then of course there will be physical ramifications and possibly even psychological as well.
Now, the question
there's NSA's keys.
I can't read that.
Timelines and alternate realities infinite. If so, does altering an existing timeline create a new reality? For that matter, do our thoughts and decisions create new realities? Interesting question, and I would suggest that we're now talking about possibilities. People go, when I make a decision, it creates a new timeline. But if you look at the Montauk project and the Philadelphia experiment, you'll see that it's possible to create what are called divergent timelines. All right. So I don't see that I make a decision to pick up a cup of tea. Suddenly, it's going to split off infinitely into infinite timelines.
Yeah.
I've not had that experience. If somebody else has, great. But we can't prove that either. Nobody can. But what has been shown to be possibly true by the guys from the Montauk project is the way that they utilize the field generators to move from one timeline or one part of a timeline to the next as well. Would you disassociate on another timeline? Yes, I believe that you would. I'm just not sure, Trish, I'm not sure whether that question related to something else. Yeah. NSA Key says, I typed my question twice in capital letters, but they don't show up. So guess what? Type in lowercase
and write question at the beginning.
And put question at the beginning, and then we'll know. John, this happened to me last week because I was copying and pasting. So John's talking about copying and pasting as well.
Yeah, we know that definitely doesn't work.
And Mystic says that same thing happened to me last week. So we have no control over whether people can copy and paste or type or whatever.
We're working it out as we go along.
This is a function of YouTube. We haven't pressed any magic buttons that says, let's just randomize whether people can do this. No, we never did that at all.
Well, we're every week something happens. So we're waiting to see what happens this week. But so far, the questions are coming up.
Trish says, the question was would you disassociate on another timeline, moving from one timeline to another? Yes, you would.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. But then you've got to ask yourself, what happens to if you're on this timeline, these timelines, these, and you start to disassociate, is there a knock-on effect? Actually, no, there's not, because you're living in an asynchronous environment, non-synchronous, which means that imagine if you're on infinite timelines, but a person starts to terminate on individual timelines as they get to a certain age, they will still exist on other timelines until all of the facets have terminated and then return back to spirit realm. And then, of course, at some point, they will then reanimate or reacclimate with the oversoul.
Did you just answer my next question? My question was, so since we exist on multiple timelines in an asynchronous environment, where do each of the facets of the same, so all the me's, where do we all go upon termination of each one?
If I had a big, Sarah, I just wanted to say, I can see you typing, just type in lowercase. If we can all type in lowercase, just put question at the front. That's going to work as well, I guess. All right. So I was thinking the way to describe this was you've got a printer and you go and buy 500 sheets of printer paper. Yep. And those 500 sheets are individual sheets, but they still belong as one block that go into the printer. As you use each sheet, the stack of sheets go down until there are none left, and then you have to buy another one. And so when we talk about spirit realm and spirits, we can liken that very badly, but we can liken it to like sheets being used by a printer.
And do all the different facets of the one spirit all return back to one oversoul? So is spirit realm a collection of every facet that got spread across multiple timelines? Or are we saying that there may be multiple spirit realm, like a spirit realm?
This is where it sort of gets a bit complicated. Imagine that, as the Anunnaki said, that they built spirit realm, right? Now, spirit realm exists around the physical planet. This means that Earth exists across multiple timelines. This means that we're trying to understand concepts of consciousness, but based in materialism and the physical reality.
Yeah.
And I think that while we're trying to do that, we're going to have a problem because basically it's like saying, oh, there's lots of radio stations out there, but you just can't see them. But we all know that they exist. But the only way that you can work out if they exist is by actually tuning into that specific radio station. So it's the same thing for spirits and spirit realms and planets and timelines. You'd have to be able to dial into every single one of them to work out what exists on that timeline as well.
I can see a whole lot of brand new questions for the Zetas about this. This can be very, very, very interesting.
We've got some questions. Mystic Starlights says, I would like to know if you can elaborate more as to why the Zetas say that many of the humans that and then the question's gone.
Okay, well, maybe we can get the back half of that question.
Maybe, Mystic, you could just type the next part of that question. I'm not sure what's happened to that. Sarah, if the Zetas only exist on this timeline, does that mean that the Zeta human hybrids only exist on this timeline? Two, actually, there's a very good reason why the Zetas say that they exist on this timeline. It's because they are disassociated with their race on all of the other timelines. From their perspective, they've created a collective consciousness, and that collective consciousness exists on this timeline. Because of the fact that they are disassociated from the other Zeta races and the other hybrids on those timelines, from their perspective and by the way that they think, they believe that they are disassociated from all those races. So in their minds, they say those races do not exist. And that may be a little bit of a difficult concept to understand from a human perspective. Nancy, why would you move around in different timelines? In other words, what is the advantage? I don't think that there actually is an advantage to moving to other timelines. I think sometimes it just happens, and other times, if it is a function of, that you needed to do that, or you did that, or you were assisted to do that by beings, that ultimately there was some type of information that you needed to have, or a lesson that you needed to experience to do that as well.
Training.
Yeah. So just to go back to Mystic Starlights, does it say that many humans are now incarcerated, may have at one stage been moved beyond the boundaries of the linear timeline? I'm not sure what that even means. I don't know what referencing you're using those words to.
I think
Sarah, here we go. Section 8.4.2 says the Zetas constructed portals to move across the boundaries of dividing regions. Are these the spaces that the interdimensionals naturally traverse? I think that they're the spaces that they naturally traverse, and they don't need to use any technology to do that, because we know that this is a feature of heterodyning. Well, some of us will know that it's a feature of heterodyning, and heterodyning is based on acclimation of moving through frequency. So that answers that question as well. All right.
Phew.
Okay.
Oh my
well,
goodness.
That's 48 minutes, and there you go.
Are there any last questions? I feel a bit exhausted.
You feel exhausted, do you?
Yeah,
okay.
I do. I'm just wondering what's next week. I haven't actually looked.
You haven't looked?
No, it's terrible, isn't it? Okay, I've got edition 14 here in my hands, and I know it's not the same as edition 17, so that's no good. But that doesn't matter. But whilst we're waiting for any last questions,
I guess, Mystic, I'm wondering where the Zetas have said that humans that are now incarcerated have at one stage moved beyond the boundaries of linear timeline. Is that from
the book?
From the book, or is that something that you've read somewhere else from another person?
They don't generally use the word
incarcerated. They don't. Yeah, I'm not aware of them ever using that word. It's from another person.
Oh, Sarah's saying.
Section 8.2.
Oh God.
Can somebody paste that in?
Ooh, no, they can't.
You
because
can't paste that in.
Do you have the PDF on here?
If you go up to books, you'll see it up there under all.
Hang on. Books.
While you're doing that, yep, in there, and then primer. Are SQEs used to view other timelines? Yes, they are. A copy is taken, but I'll give you an example. Just type in the word under, use Control F and then type it in. Spirit people are also utilized in synthetic quantum environments as well. So if they want to work with a spirit person, because we know that the extraterrestrials don't actually work with spirits, they're not allowed to because of the frequency difference. What they may do is just take a copy of a spirit person using technology and then interacting with them in a synthetic quantum environment as well.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find the word?
Mm-mm. Not yet. Hang on.
Did you just type it in?
No, I didn't.
Into Control F, incarcerated.
I got to section 8.2.
No, you just type the word in.
Incarcerated.
You can paste, John says. You just have to backspace. Well done, John.
That's so funny.
Yeah? No, not there?
No, I can't find it. But I might be spelling it wrong.
Just INC. No?
Here we go.
What does it say?
Incarnation.
Maybe that's what you meant. Did you mean incarnation?
Here we go.
No?
Here we go. Okay, so I'll put my best reading voice on.
Okay.
The timeline holds within its capacity to keep your consciousness, your mental state, in a state of normality. As you move out of this construct, you'll find you will become disorientated, not just from the point of local consciousness, from that point of being integrated as a form living on this timeline. Yeah. Once that takes place, you will seem to become unstable. And so, yes, many of the humans that are now incarcerated may have at one stage moved beyond the boundaries of this linear timeline.
That's probably why what we need to do when we're doing this is actually, if someone's got a technical question, maybe put in the page number so that we can look. I think when they were talking about that, they were talking about people in the past that who were claiming that, well, they were stating they were being contacted, and basically they were seen as being unstable.
Yeah, this is in the context of traveling from...
Yeah, so from one timeline.
And talking about the lack of abilities to sustain you in that new timeline process.
Trish says she needs another coffee.
So do I.
We all do. At this point, we all do. We knew that this one was going to be a tongue twister. The Zetas refer to the source energy. Do they believe in the law of one? They wouldn't even know what the law of one is.
But they would say that we are all
one. We are one. But the thing is, whether they believe in somebody else's channeling or writing or something, that's probably not going to happen.
We'd have to explain it to them and then see if there was a comparison for them.
I know that I did ask them once whether they understood God, and they showed me a gold light, and they said, we can see source, but nobody can touch source. Nobody can go to source, because if they do, their construct becomes dissolved as well. So Julia says the page numbers are different in the 17th edition from the 14th.
They sure are.
And so
chapter 9.
So we have the PDF edition that anybody can download for free.
Yes.
And that's edition 17. Whereas the physical book that we have is edition 14.
Yeah.
Not wanting to buy 17 copies of the printed book.
17 bricks.
All right.
So what is chapter 9? Chapter 9 is the energetic
environment and the etheric body. That will be
consciousness and connections.
Hey, the next show is at a different time.
And so that's what I was just about to say. Okay, so next week, which is we had a little timeline issue.
That's
there.
Right.
Wednesday the 10th. Okay, we're going to be at a different time. Still going to be on the Wednesday. So is if you are in PDT, Pacific, it'll be 10 a.m. If you're in Central, it'll be 12 noon. If you're in Eastern, it will be 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If fortunately you're in Australia, it's going to be about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, good.
If you're, it's going to be 6 p.m.
I'll tell you what you can do. When I create the next stream, if you click on it, it'll tell you when the next stream is in your time, so that you don't have to worry about it.
It'll have a little countdown on the side for you.
All right, so now we've got a question. Before we go, this is the last question. If all timelines are happening at once, do the Zetas have a way of determining probabilities for future timelines to guide their decisions in the terms of helping the planet? They only view one timeline. They do not view infinite timelines at all. Nobody would have, even the Zetas have even said that the capacity to actually accurately understand what's going on one timeline is absurdly impossible to even work this out. That's why they have to take a copy of it, because of the observational effects. To do it across infinite timelines is just not possible.
I think we're going to have a Timelines 2 session.
No.
We are, because what I'm going to do is load up questions for our next sitting, questions that we've debated, and see if they'll give us a more specific answer.
Okay, so you're going to ask them.
Yeah, and then come back and give the answers. Now, I just want to say, if you've joined us halfway through this, or you've never joined us before, or if this is the first time you're coming across this video, and if you've got literally no idea what we are all going on about, we are talking about a book that you can download for free. It's always been free. It's a PDF from our website, which is the zetaconnection.com. The links for it are in the YouTube information for this video. You can download that, you can have a read, and you can send us questions if you'd like to, that we will answer on these live shows. Okay.
All right. See you all next week.
See you next week. Thank you.